can't say that enough. If someone is cheating and lying and confusing you, they've lived like that for a very long time. That's not just something that's come up with you.
A lot of the time, I imagine they will want a formal apology. They'll want like a solid sense of closure or accountability of actions. Most of the time, I imagine that doesn't come. So in the absence of that, how does somebody let go?
So as long as you don't have any trick questions for me, which I'll cover anyway, I'm sure I'll have an answer.
Okay. Well, no.
I don't always have an answer, John, but nearly always.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I've got any trick questions, but basically wanted to invite you back on to talk about something that we didn't speak about in the episode. The comment that I got a lot, or what people, and this is more private comments. I've actually received a lot of private comments because people who are going through heartbreak or hurt don't particularly want to publicly show that. So something I've received a lot is that we didn't talk about when people are carrying with them such negative feelings towards an ex, and this can last months and even years. So before you kind of tell me how somebody could potentially let go of those feelings, I'm curious to know from your experience, how common is it that one person out of a relationship, probably more so the person that got broken up with, carries with them quite a lot of hurt and hate and negative feelings towards an ex?
Well, again, if we're talking about, the buzzword toxic relationships, because again, every relationship has elements of, small things in the relationship, maybe small lies or small hurts or small, in every relation, no relationship is perfect. But if we're talking about the other end of the continuum where it's quite brutal, then it's a whole number of things. If even though the person leaves you, say the person leaves you in that relationship and they're gone, your internal system is still primed. It's still primed because of fear. It's defensive. So the system itself within you, if you're the one that's left, even though there's a part of you's probably always thought, I'm going to miss this person when they're gone, that's not really the issue. The issue is you still have a system that is geared around that person. And that system has become hypervigilant. It's become self-doubting. It's become self-doubting of relationships. And so the system is still primed and very active when someone leaves a relationship, especially if it's toxic. So your whole body is still active. So the body has to completely calm that. It takes time for the body to accept that the person's gone. But why toxic relationships are really so damaging is we start to doubt ourselves and we start to doubt relationships. And I think that's the most toxic element of relationships, of toxic relationship, is the kind of questioning of yourself. If that person's had that behavior their whole life, it's really got nothing to do with you. Now, I'm not saying you haven't got your bit there, because you stayed, you didn't leave the relationship, you put up with it. So you have your bit to think about. That's your bit to think about. But you have to separate that out from them and their behavior that's always been there. It's always there. I cannot say that enough. I say that to clients over the years. No one shows me special behavior. Nobody. I just get to observe or experience the person for who they are. So it's really important, that bit, to understand that yes, we have our own bit, which was we stayed, perhaps we didn't leave, perhaps we put up with too much. But we're not responsible for their behavior. We did not make them act the way they did, because that's the questions we'll be asking ourselves. Did I make that happen? Did I upset him? So I think to separate those things is really important.
Because you said that one of the main reasons that you see couples end relationships is betrayal, in gay relationships, maybe particularly. What if we're to just sort of analyze and think about why it is that one partner does go behind the other one's back and entertain other men and cheat and even go ahead with sleeping or having completely separate relationships, it's easy for the other partner to internalize that and think, I'm not hot enough, I'm not good enough, and all these other things. But what's, in your experience, actually going on with the other partner? What is the drive to go behind the other person's back and do what they're doing?
So you're talking about the person with the kind of, if we're talking about bad behavior almost in a relationship,
like,
that
what's going through their mind to not just be open with their partner and do it all privately and hurt them so much?
Well, I'd imagine again it's ingrained behavior. Someone's not going to just come up with that behavior from nowhere. But the reasons for that, there can be numerous reasons. I'm sure you hear the term a lot on social media around narcissism or, selfishness, when people are very selfish. And they're also able to compartmentalize. They're able to literally cut off a part of themselves. I cannot say that enough. So there's two people there. There's the person that lies, cheats, and has the affairs, and there's the other person that doesn't. I cannot say that enough. So there's that group, about 5% of the population, and then we unfortunately come back to the unfortunate, and I really don't want to demonize any attachment group here. I want to be really clear about that. Every attachment is equal. There's no difference. It's just we're responding differently in the world. We're protecting ourselves differently in the world. But also and people are quite avoidant, when they're also quite avoidant, I've got some gems for you here. They can also cheat as a way to create distance in the relationship. So if I cheat on you, it gives me a little bit of space. It gives me distance. And if if I am, say, avoidant dismissive or anxious avoidant, I'm definitely going to create that space for myself. And a couple of classics I've heard from clients, now what I mean by that is an avoidant. I want to be clear that's not really demon. I will be clear about this because I thought about it after last week time we talked, and I don't, it's really equal in the attachments. But really what's happening there is they're trying to create space. They can't feel too close. If they feel too close, it again interrupts their system, and they have to do something about it.
Okay.
Again, in the anxious attachments, John, I'll show you that. They like a lot of closeness. I don't know if you're moving back already, John, because that's quite close. It's kind of, that's right. But, they like a lot of closeness, and sometimes it can be too much, too. Just to be fair to each attachment style here, it can be a little bit too much here, too. So that would be generally the reasons why, but I can't say that enough. If someone is cheating and lying and confusing you, they've lived like that for a very long time. That's not just something that's come up with you. That really isn't. That's ingrained behavior over time.
And presumably, to offer some comfort to people who have gone through this or are going through, unpacking the relationship without many answers, the cheater or the betrayer or whatever presumably will continue to do that to future partners as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if they don't sort their shit out, I guess.
I can really guarantee it. I
Yeah.
can guarantee it, Neely. And the other issue is that, again, sorry to go to that attachment type, but because the anxious, preoccupied attachment type definitely comes to therapy. There's no doubt about that. But the other attachment type, the other end of the continuum, the avoidant attachment, they don't tend to do therapy. And if they do, it's 2 or 3 sessions, because therapy is a relationship too. And, I really, when I hear that on the phone, because I ask some questions there to try and establish what the attachment type might be, if there's a period of long, short-term relationships, I'm kind of working out that this person can't stay in relationships very long. And so I kind of said to them, you'll come and see me, you'll do 2 or 3 sessions, and then you'll disappear from me here too. And they'll go, no, Brent, that's not true. I won't do that. I've heard that you do this stuff in attachment. And then they come, they stay 2 or 3 sessions, and they leave. And I always feel, a little bit sad for them too, because I can understand why they don't stay in therapy, because, they're very heady, they're very cognitive.
Yeah.
And again, they're less in their feelings. So I would say that too, really. That's part of the problem of not changing. And that's why the behavior continues.
And I suppose therapy is confronting, and also to these people, potentially it's just I haven't found the right partner yet.
That really is.
So it's not that it's like the right person will bring out the best version of me, and I just haven't met them yet. And they could go their entire lives still rotating partners and never actually.
They really could.
Yeah.
I've seen an interesting client some years ago. I'll just mix it up a little bit so I don't give anything away. It was a gal. And she came to see me, and I think she had something like 100 ex-partners.
Wow.
That many.
Yeah.
And I kind of tried to suggest, I always say this, I'll say, there's 10 perfectly good people on that wall that you can choose from. They're all perfectly good. You could just choose one and you could go off and have a relationship with that person. It'll perfectly be okay. And as the moment I do that, they go, no, 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 no. I've tried that. I've gone off with many people. It's them. They're too much. They always want too much. I can't give them what they need. It's this kind of dialogue.
Mm.
And what they can't see is that their behavior is just repeating over time. And
Yeah.
that's what I point out. I point out that, because really, if you're interested in this, John, your viewers, your listeners, viewers, really what's happening there too is there's a lot of denial around their own behavior, a lot of denial because their feelings are pushed down. So they're in the world and they're kind of in denial about what's going on because, at the end of the day, you can't meet 100 people and not one of them work. Must be something going on that's not about the people. And that's the bit they don't want to hear. When I say, look, listen, any of those people that you met over the last 20 years, some of them will have been good enough, but you will not have seen that. You will not have seen that. So that's the other issue. They tend to continue in relationships in the dark almost, not really understanding why they're repeatedly coming in and out of relationships. There's not a huge amount of awareness there. And some there is, don't get me wrong, but on the whole not. On the whole not.
So the people that might be the heartbreakers, do they ever regret?
Now, again, if we separate that into just normal life, I'd imagine they do. I'd imagine they look back and think about maybe sometime, but I'm not saying never. I'd imagine heartbreakers do. But if you think about it, one I'm more interested in there is why are we with heartbreakers? There's the interesting thing for me. It's of course people can break other people's hearts, it's particular behavior. And, when I was young and I sat around with my girlfriends in the 80s and they would talk about some of their dreadful relationships, I would always say something like, well, that guy's great for a weekend, but I definitely wouldn't have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
There's a kind of division there. Those heartbreakers are great to have a bit of fun with, John.
Yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't get into a relationship with one of them.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, why are we choosing that kind of person too? It's again, there's two people here, and both people are equally responsible to some degree.
Yeah, well, back to our original conversation. If they're lighting your fire up, it's very difficult to ignore that, isn't it?
It really is.
So
Go
you
on,
really
it
you
really
need,
is.
you need to rein yourself in sometimes, I think.
That's right. That's
Um,
right. It's very easy not to, of course. I
So-
completely understand that.
If you are carrying a lot of negative feelings towards a person after a breakup, and you almost want to let go of that energy, regardless of I suppose the level of hurt, there will be scales of hurt. There's like obviously the top end will be the top end will be like abuse, then there's like cheating and whatever, all the way up until just like waking up one morning and dumping you, which will be shit as well.
That's right.
How does a person just let go of the negativity that they're carrying? Because a lot of the time I imagine they will want a formal apology, they'll want like a solid sense of closure or accountability of actions. Most of the time I imagine that doesn't come. So in the absence of that, how does somebody let go?
Again, it depends, very much depends on how bad the relationship was, because we're talking again about how can we let go when our whole nervous system is still activated after someone we were in a relationship is gone, especially if they were very toxic. And again, if we look down the other end of the scale, people in what we would call kind of normal relationships, where maybe the communication's not great, maybe they got together for the wrong reasons, maybe they found it difficult to leave each other because of loyalty or commitment, whatever those things are. I'm not saying that when we come out of those relationships, we also don't feel hurt, but I think the hurt's much easier to integrate. It's much easier to accept or understand. And what's interesting in toxic relationships, it's very hard to integrate that kind of experience, of being lied to, gaslit, blamed, confused. You didn't say that. Your memory's not very good. I didn't say that. What do you think happens to you when that's done to you? Like, did you say? I don't think I said that. We are confused. We are doubting ourselves. So as much as we want to be ready, John, and my God, do we want to be ready and move on? Who wants to sit in that pain? It's a simple matter of time for that whole system to calm down. Even at the other end of the scale, if it's not such a bad breakup, the system still has to calm down a little. We have to undo the connections because when we're with someone, especially for a long period of time, we have all these connections we're hardly aware of. And what we're doing is almost separating. It's a process. It's always a process. And we're separating. So I'd say if our relationship's been generally healthy-ish, then it's going to be a quicker time to recovery. We're going to have a less activated system because the person was lying and cheating on us. So, it's all gaslighting us. So I think it's really about what kind of relationship you're in. And if you're saying to me, how do we get to a place? That's, I think, another question, and I can definitely help you with that. But it's probably unlikely that you'll be able to move on quickly out when you leave a toxic relationship. It's very unlikely. You will need time to restore trust in yourself. If you think about it, you are the one that stayed. You are the one that went back numerous times. So you have let yourself down. These are the things that we're left with. Now, don't get me wrong. The other part is you've also been lied to, cheated. You've been confused, gaslit. The whole system's activated. But there's also this element of, why did I not leave? Why did I stay? Why did I continue to do that? So I think these things take time to move on from, and I have some ways we can do that, definitely, which makes that process a little bit smoother, but it's still going to take time.
Yeah.
And when we obsess less about the person, when we're replaying the same dialogue, less of he did, I did, she did, then the whole system's calming down and we're getting to a place where we're ready to move on. It's almost like we're going from obsession to curiosity. So we're moving out of obsession and we're moving into curiosity. What could my life be like? What might I do with that? Who might I meet? What might that look like? And that's really a kind of process. It's unfortunately, as much as I'd like to wave my magic wand in therapy, sometimes, John, to make it all go away, we can't make it all go away. It just takes time. And there are some ways we can make it easier for ourselves and some ways we can make it more difficult for ourselves, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what people are going to want to know, because to be told that it takes time is an incredibly frustrating prospect when it's dominating your life and your thinking. So, I don't know, you tell me, do people carry these feelings for months, years even?
It can be months or years, yeah, it can be. Again, it's if you're asking how we can make that, are you asking how we can make that a little
bit
easier for ourselves?
What's a way that you can actually have a bit of participation in that healing? How can you actively encourage that or move it along slightly so it's not just time?
Great.
It's actually actively changing that yourself.
I think one is to really be aware of the replay. When we're constantly replaying the dialogue, the he did, I did, was it my fault, was it his fault? If we're aware of that kind of rumination or replay, because that's again activating the whole system. Thinking and thoughts will activate the system. So if we can name it, if we can say to ourselves, I am replaying the same old story. And we have to disrupt the body there. We have to literally get up and move around, do something else, read something, distract ourselves. We can then reduce the amount of activation in the nervous system. So the less we are ruminating, the less activation of the system. So I'd say the very first thing to do is to name it, to say, I am replaying the same old thing over and over again. It's like a story. It's a story we're trying to close, and we can't close because the other person's gone. So it's really that. First of all, is to name it. I am replaying this thing over and over again. And the other thing is now this takes time, instead of waking up every morning, now we're going to do this coming out of a difficult relationship, there's no doubt about this, and none of this is easy, John. We can make it easier, but it's not going to be easy. But I think one of the most important things we can really do as well when we're coming out of that type of relationship is, instead of ruminating every day about, did I do, did they do, what are they thinking, are they still thinking about me, was it me, did I hurt? Instead of that, we need to ask ourselves this: what do I need today? What do I need? Because what we're doing is we're losing ourselves. So we're losing ourselves to some kind of rumination in our brain. I need to ask myself this: what do I need today? Not ruminate all day long, thinking about my ex-partner, driving myself insane. Now, we're going to do that. I've done it. We're all going to do it. We're all human. But I think the main thing is to really take that on board and understand that. What do I need? Because you will need something. You will need to look after yourself. You will need your friends around you, maybe your family. You will need conversations. You will need understanding. So instead of us constantly going back into a relationship that ended in our head and ruminating over and over again, which is normal and natural because the brain's doing what it's supposed to do, I would say this: what do I need today? What do I need to do for myself to make this better for me?
Would you, the thought, oh, the best way to get over someone is under someone, is a part of that. There might be a reluctance to go on dates or to have sex with new guys. Would you say that's actually quite a healthy thing, to feel valued again and sexy or whatever?
Do you know what's difficult about? I really get to hear that a lot, of course. But I think what's difficult about that, if we're not ready, that can work against you. It can really work against you. Now, I'm not saying that if we can go off in a kind of hedonistic way and, say F to the world or whatever that is, and just, go out and sleep around. I'm not saying that we mightn't have a bit of fun or it mightn't be a bit of a distraction, but ultimately we are still going to have to deal with what's going on within us. That's not going to go away. We can't just sleep our way out of that. If that was the case, John, I'd be saying to gay men, just sleep your way out of that. That's not a problem at all. I mean, what an awful thing, John.
Yeah.
We have to sleep our way out of that.
Your
So I would
homework,
say-
your homework this week is to download Grindr.
That's a devil grinder.
Yeah.
Sleep around. So I think even though we do try to do that, we definitely try to do that because we're dealing with a lot of pain. We're dealing with a lot of heartache and hurt, and we want it to stop. We want it to stop. This is one of the, now that I think about that really, this is one of the main reasons why we take the toxic person back. Because the moment they're back, our pain stops. So even though we feel we want the person back, I want that person back, what we're really saying is I want the pain to stop. So sometimes we compromise ourselves and take the person back because then the pain stops. But generally, if you're talking about, how do we get over that kind of activation and pain, and can we sleep around and help it that way? I'd say, no, we can't. I'm not saying it's not maybe a bit exciting, you have a bit of fun, John, but that's not going to solve the problem.
You said a second ago as well, there are things that you should absolutely not do in this sort of this search to let go. What would those be? I imagine it's like, just don't look on their social media.
Absolutely, don't look. And again, it's going to be going on in your head anyway, John. Where are they? What are they doing? Who are they with? So again, you're going to go to social media maybe again to stop the pain, because we're going there. If you think about it, if I go there and he's doing nothing and he's a little bit down and sleeping at home, I'm not going to be thinking he's left in the time of his life. So I think that's where we're going to social media. We're looking for that, and actually we get the opposite of that. We get he's having the time of his life.
Yeah.
And that makes things worse. So I would say don't look at social media. I would say don't ask questions if you're still some friends of them. I would just really say try your best to return to yourself. Because that's really the goal here, is to return to yourself and try to help yourself move along. You will be damaged, depending on how toxic it was. And it's a recovery road for you. It's a recovery road back to trust. Trust of yourself and trust of others and trust of relationships.
I suppose the final point on this sort of letting go would be, we spoke about it in the episode around closure, but another element of that would be this want for an apology, or a want for a sort of tying up the bow on a conversation that might never have happened, around, oh, so this guy that you were texting, or like, this time several months ago when I found this in your room and you told me
right.
When you told me it was nothing, I now want to know an answer for that. There's all these sort of, I'm sure people have these unfinished stories that they want to close up. How do we? And a lot of the time that will never happen.
That's correct.
And maybe you would say it is no point in getting back in touch with somebody and asking these questions.
There would be no point.
So what is?
They're probably not going to give you. They probably didn't give you those answers in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, because I'd imagine you probably would have asked maybe, or maybe, within the relationship. So I'm guessing that probably these answers never were put forward. So I think what you said, which is lovely, John, it's a story. And the brain, we live in a world of stories. In fact, we lose ourselves in our minds sometimes in stories. We go off into sometimes a nice place, Joe, sometimes not such a nice place. So, stories, I love the way you said that. Stories are really important. And what the brain does, the brain likes a nice, clean story, likes a nice ending. So the brain wants that, but the brain's not going to get it. It's as simple as that. So
Yeah.
what really happens there is when we're getting to a stage where we are able to move on, the story is less important. It's less important for there to be a clean ending. We can almost live without the clean ending. The whole activated system there within our body, the anxiety, the defense, the confusion, the self-doubt, all of that starts to calm down. The body is no longer so activated. So when the body's less activated, we're able to move on from the story where the story's less important. The wrapping it up all nicely is less important. And what we start to do is, and especially when the activation stops or the activation becomes better or softer is probably the word, because it starts off as quite brutal and then we're ending up with this softness. When we're at that stage, we're probably ready to move on.
Mm.
And I think that's the most important thing. We can't be on a date with someone in our head we're going, I'm so angry, who's he with tonight? And like, we can't, how can we move on
Yeah.
when we're still ruminating, we're still angry at ourselves. So it's really about that whole system calming down over time. There's definitely things we can do. Like I said, separate their behavior out. If it's their past behavior, don't take responsibility. It's their behavior over time. You have to ask yourself, why did I stay in this relationship? Why was I not able to move on? So there's different responsibilities, but ultimately it's when the body starts to calm down and we move from obsession in the brain, obsessing all day long, to being a little bit more curious about the world. That's when we're ready to move on. I cannot say that enough. And it's a process, John. The brain's good at that. It's good to bring it through a process.
Mm.
Now, if we get stuck there and we're ruminating 2 years later, then we probably need to see a therapist if we can. If we can't, maybe talk to our friends around, I am ruminating, I cannot stop this. Again, discuss that because it is possible that we can continue that for a long period of time. But again, if you can separate those things out, the whole system should be able to calm down.
Great. Okay. Do you have any other points that you wanted to say around this subject?
No, I think that was it. It's really, I think what's so lovely, what I was thinking about, because it's about connection, and we're connecting to someone here, and we're connecting through love and closeness and empathy and maybe even dreams. Dreams around what our relationship might look like in some years, how happy we will be, where will we live, how will that look with our family, all these different things. So it's not just the person we give up. We give up a whole dream of the person, a whole dream of what our lives could be. So it's also really the loss of that as well. It's the loss of the person, but also the dream. And the dream is a kind of story too, John, that we were talking about earlier. So I'd say again, that's just part of that.
Yeah, and there's the potential and there's the reality, and I think that people can rose tint glasses a relationship actually, and then if you think about if you were getting what you wanted out of it, most of the time you probably weren't. So
That's what, but it takes time to get to that place where you can
yeah,
kind of accept that. I think that's what's important. And then the last thing, because I think you'd ask me that in the questions around forgiveness. Some people believe in forgiveness and some people don't believe in forgiveness. I think the problem with forgiveness is people can put a lot of pressure on themselves to forgive before they're ready. And I think, again, that's something we have to be aware of, that sometimes we're not ready to forgive, and that takes time, if ever.
if ever.
If ever.
Shit. Okay.
It might have been so dramatic that you can't forgive. And again, forgiveness is interesting because it's a religious concept. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying if you're religious or spiritual, then forgiveness is definitely going to work for you. So now I'm not. So forgiveness is not going to work for me. And what will work for me is this, John. I really separate out their behavior. I will say something to this, like this to myself. You came into my life already with the behavior you had. I'm not going to take that into myself. I'm going to give it back to you. It's your behavior. It's your way of being in the world. I'm going to give that back to you, and I'm going to wish you well in the world. It's not mine to hold, and it's not mine to obsess about. Do you hear that, John? Because it doesn't belong to me. So that's my alternative to forgiveness. Because again, I have no disrespect to spirituality, people who are spiritual, religious. I completely think it's wonderful if that's the case, and you can forgive, and that works for you. But bear in mind that we mightn't be ready to forgive. And also, if you're not religious or spiritual, maybe think about what I said, really understanding that we're not going to take on their stuff. We're going to just give it back. And then we're going to hold our own stuff. You know, why was I in the relationship? Why did I not leave? You know. So already it's looking better if you think about that. If we're not taking responsibility for their behavior, because it wasn't us, they behaved like that well before they met me, then we're only dealing with those bits. So we can do those things to help ourselves.
I think that's a brilliant place to end this on. That was
Right.
That was a fantastic Brent Magee quote right there.
Thank you, John. It's a real pleasure as always, John, and thank you so much for asking me back. I really enjoyed it with you. I find you super relaxed, super easy, super smart, and super open, John, and I've really enjoyed my time with you. I really have, and I want to wish you luck with everything.
Great, thank you. And I would like to say, I guess with every therapist, you're like, oh, I hope I don't need to see you again, Brent, but you never know.
I always say this, I hope you never see me again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I always say.
Yeah.
Take it easy, John. Look
All right.
after yourself.
See you, Brent. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
John.